The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., though Marcus had already been awake for 10 minutes, listening to the soft, steady breathing of his daughter curled up beside him. Lily slept with her stuffed elephant tucked beneath her chin, as she had since she was 3, a small anchor of comfort in a world that had demanded far too much from her far too young. Marcus slipped quietly from the bed so he wouldn't wake her. His body moved with the muscle memory of a man who had shaped his life around someone else's needs, quiet efficiency, no wasted motion, no complaints. The apartment was dim and cold, but familiar. A coffee maker sputtered to life on the counter, the scent filling the tiny kitchen. He pulled on his uniform, navy work pants, a matching shirt with Marcus Webb stitched in white above the pocket. His reflection in the window showed a man with gentle lines around his eyes, a smudge of gray at his temples, and a weariness that went bone deep. Not defeated, just tempered. 3 years earlier he had worn a suit each morning. An engineer's badge had hung from his belt. His hands had shaped aerospace components now orbiting far above the earth he could no longer afford to rise within. That life had unraveled piece by piece as Sarah's illness tightened its grip. First the savings. Then the house. Then the future they had dreamed for Lily. When Sarah died, Marcus had made a promise at her bedside, Lily will never feel alone. I'll give her everything I can. He hadn't known that everything would sometimes mean scrubbing floors to pay medical bills. By 5:15, he kissed Lily's forehead and whispered he'd be back before school. At 5:30, he pushed through the polished glass doors of Ashford Industries. The lobby greeted him the same way it did every Thursday, with cold marble floors, towering floor-to-ceiling windows, and stillness broken only by the rhythmic squeak of his cleaning cart's wheels. Marcus respected the quiet. He preferred it. The world felt simpler when no one was watching him. He wiped down the windows first, then began buffing the enormous marble floor. His motions were steady and measured. He took pride in doing things right, even work no one else noticed. He didn't hear the approaching heels at first. Only a sharp exhale, annoyed, clipped, before the voice cut through the silence like a blade. What is this? Marcus turned, already knowing the tone before he met the eyes. Victoria Ashford stood 3 feet away, tall and immaculate in a charcoal suit sharp enough to draw blood. Her blonde hair was twisted into a flawless knot. Her expression was not flawless, she was irritated, pressed for time, and looking for somewhere to place the blame. His cart was positioned too close to the executive elevator. That was all. A minor inconvenience. But Victoria Ashford did not believe in minor inconveniences. I'm sorry, ma'am, Marcus said, reaching immediately for the cart. I'll move it right away. But Victoria didn't wait for him to finish. Her voice carried through the cavernous lobby, gathering the attention of early arriving employees who froze mid-stride. If this is the standard we hire now, she said, gesturing sharply at the cart, perhaps that explains why everything keeps falling apart. Look at this, carelessness. Equipment cluttering pathways. Hazards everywhere. I apologize for the inconvenience. See that it doesn't happen again. Her blue eyes sliced through him, not with anger, anger is personal, but with something colder, dismissal. Marcus nodded, steady and silent, moving the cart aside with practiced calm. He didn't defend himself. He didn't plead. He didn't remind her that engineers once called him sir. Pride was a luxury he hadn't been able to afford in years. Yet as she turned away, something in her expression flickered. A nearly imperceptible pause, a tightness in her jaw, the faint recognition that this man, this janitor, did not react the way she expected. No resentment. No defiance. Just quiet dignity. It unsettled her more than she would ever admit. Marcus pushed his cart down the service corridor, ignoring the murmured sympathy behind him. She didn't have to do that. Poor guy. He kept moving. He had learned long ago that some wounds healed faster when left unspoken. By the time he clocked out 3 hours later, Victoria Ashford's cruelty had already begun to fade into the background noise of survival. But fate had taken note. And fate, unlike Marcus, was not quiet. The day the world tilted. Marcus carried Lily's backpack in one hand and her tiny fingers in the other as they stepped off the bus in front of St. Vincent's Hospital. The early afternoon sun glinted off the glass facade with a harsh brightness that made the building look more like a fortress than a place of healing. Lily hopped over the cracks in the pavement, humming a song only she seemed to know, her stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. To Marcus, she looked like a pocket-sized miracle. Inside, the pediatric lobby was its usual whirlwind, a collision of crying toddlers, exhausted parents, rolling strollers, and flashing monitors. Marcus had grown used to the rhythm of it, but today something felt off. A tension humming beneath the surface. Nurses had that brisk, clipped walk that signaled emergencies brewing elsewhere in the hospital. Doctors leaned in close whispers. Even Lily felt it. She squeezed his hand a little tighter. "Are the doctors mad today?" she whispered. "No," Marcus said softly. "Just busy." He smiled to reassure her, but unease crept under his skin. His instincts rarely failed him, engineering had taught him to hear pressure before a machine exploded. They hadn't even made it to the check-in desk when the emergency double doors burst open so violently the metal frame rattled. Two paramedics stormed through, pushing a gurney at a dead sprint. The oxygen mask on the child's face fogged with every shallow, desperate breath she managed. Her skin was the color of candle wax. Her hospital gown was speckled with drops of bright red blood. A nurse scrambled backward to clear the path. "Female, age 7, a paramedic shouted. Suspected internal hemorrhage. BP dropping, she's crashing. We need the pediatric trauma team now." Lily froze. Marcus moved her behind him instinctively. And in that split second, barely a heartbeat, Marcus saw the child's hand slip from the edge of the gurney, fingers twitching, reaching for anyone who might anchor her to the world. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But something in her stillness terrified him. She was close to the place Sarah had reached, the edge between staying and slipping away forever. The universe, it seemed, wasn't finished with Marcus Webb. Their appointment proceeded with forced normalcy after that, but Marcus's thoughts kept returning to the little girl. Lily noticed. "Daddy," she whispered while the doctor checked her heartbeat. "Are you thinking about the girl who was hurt?" He wasn't just thinking about her. He could still hear the panic in the paramedic's voice. He could still see the blood. Before he answered, a loud crash echoed down the hallway. A scream followed. The kind that didn't sound like pain. The kind that sounded like fear. The doctor stepped back, startled. "Stay here." But Lily was already sliding off the exam table, and Marcus was already moving. Not running. Not yet. But with the heavy, purposeful stride of a man who sensed that fate was pulling him by the collar. They rounded the corner, and the world tilted. An 4-pole lay bent on the floor. A wheelchair overturned. A nurse knelt beside a seizing child, her hands trembling. And on the ground, barely a foot from Marcus's boots, lay the same girl from the gurney. Her small limbs jerked violently, her eyes rolling back, foam gathering at the corner of her mouth. A removed 4 lay beside her like a severed lifeline. She pulled it out, she ran, "I couldn't catch her," the nurse choked out. Lily pressed her face into Marcus's hip. He felt her trembling. "Stay here, baby," he whispered. He dropped to his knees. Training buried under 3 years of grief rose like a ghost returning to duty. Marcus turned the child gently onto her side to keep her airway clear. He slid his jacket under her head. He counted the seconds, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Counting gave him control. Counting meant she wasn't slipping away alone. 21 seconds. Her fingers curled tightly around his wrist. 32 seconds. Her lips moved. A whisper escaped, fragile, terrified. "Don't let me die." Marcus swallowed hard. "I've got you," he whispered. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." 43 seconds. Then it stopped. Her body went limp. For a moment, an eternal, unbearable moment, Marcus thought she had died in his hands. But then she inhaled sharply, a ragged, desperate gasp. Color flickered faintly beneath her skin. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing a pair of blue eyes glassy with tears. "You're safe," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking in a way he hadn't allowed since Sarah's last night. "I promise. You're safe." The medical team arrived in a storm, gloves snapping, orders shouted, monitors wheeled in at breakneck speed. Marcus stepped back only when they physically pulled him away. Lily rushed into his arms, trembling so hard he had to hold her with both hands. "Daddy, is she?" "They're helping her," he murmured, kissing her hair. "They're doing everything they can." But he knew the truth, the child had lost far too much blood. He had seen the pale lips, the sluggish pulse, the panic in the nurse's eyes. She was hanging on by threads. And then, just as he gathered Lily to leave, a voice rang through the hospital speakers. Cold. Mechanical. Urgent. Code red. O negative blood required immediately. Pediatric emergency. All compatible staff report to the donation center. People froze mid-step. Marcus did too. Lily looked up at him with wide, worried eyes, Sarah's eyes. "That's your blood, isn't it?" Marcus nodded. The universe, relentless and unmerciful, had drawn its line. Somewhere in this hospital, a child was dying. And she needed him. He took Lily's hand. "Come on, sweetheart," he whispered. "We're going to help someone." The perfect match, the worst moment. The donation center at St. Vincent's was chaos incarnate. Nurses sprinted between stations, lab technicians shouted readings across the room, and fear hung thick in the air like a metallic taste. The overhead lights flickered under the strain of constant activity, and the sound of rushing footsteps echoed like a storm building inside the hospital walls. Marcus entered holding Lily's hand, but immediately a nurse rushed toward him. "Blood type?" she asked, breathless. "Oh, negative," Marcus answered. The nurse froze. Just for a heartbeat. But in a crisis, even a heartbeat matters. Her eyes widened, hope, sharp and desperate, igniting behind them. "Come with me, right now." She whisked him toward a screening station so quickly Lily had to jog to keep up. Marcus sat, rolling up his sleeve, while Lily climbed onto a chair beside him, her feet dangling. The nurse barked over her shoulder, "Priority testing, flag it. We may have a viable donor." Two other staff snapped into action, drawing vials of blood, scanning forms, typing furiously at terminals. The fluorescent lights above hummed with static, casting long shadows across the donation floor. Marcus felt Lily's small fingers slip into his palm. "Daddy," she whispered, "what if they need a lot?" "Then I'll give a lot," he said. But inside, tension wound tight as steel wire. He felt the dizziness of his earlier adrenaline crash. He felt the fear of giving too much and being unable to care for Lily afterward. He felt the weight of Sarah's last breath, the unspoken promise that he would always fight for the children who had no one else. A lab tech sprinted back with the results, practically sliding to a stop. Her voice trembled. "He's not just O negative," she said. "He's a perfect antigen match." The room went still. Even the machines seemed to pause. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. The coordinator stepped forward. She was a seasoned woman, gray hair, sharp eyes, but now those eyes softened with something near reverence. "It means," she said slowly, "that your blood is the closest possible match we could ever hope for. 1 in 10,000. Maybe rarer." Marcus blinked, stunned. "Can it save her?" "It can do more than save her," the coordinator whispered. "It can stabilize her instantly. It might be the only reason she survives the next hour. Lily squeezed his hand so tightly it almost hurt. Daddy. I think you have to. Marcus managed a small, strained smile. Yeah, baby. I do. The coordinator hesitated, then spoke carefully. We're going to need 2 units. That's more than a standard donation. You'll feel weak. Maybe sick. Honestly, you shouldn't walk afterward. I'll crawl if I have to, Marcus said. Just tell me where to lie down. She nodded, moved by his calm, quiet resolve. The type of resolve that didn't shout or boast, it simply acted. They guided him to the donation bed. A nurse cleaned his arm, prepared the needle, checked his vitals. His heart rate was high. His blood pressure low. But he wasn't turning back. Then. The doors slammed open. A woman burst into the room like a hurricane breaking through glass. Her heels clicked violently against the floor. Her hair, normally sleek and perfect, was coming undone. Her suit jacket hung crooked, as though she'd been clawing at it during the worst hours of her life. Please, she gasped. They said there might be a donor. Please tell me. She spotted him. Marcus. On the donation bed. Lily at his side. Her face drained of color. Completely. The man she had humiliated 8 hours ago. The man she had dismissed as invisible, unimportant, beneath her. The man whose blood was now keeping her daughter alive. For a moment, just one moment, the world narrowed into a silent, devastating stillness. Victoria Ashford staggered backward as though struck. You, she breathed. It's you. Marcus didn't meet her eyes. He was staring at the ceiling, focusing on his breathing as the needle slid into his arm. The bag began to fill. Crimson. Warm. Life-saving. Victoria stepped closer, unable to stop herself. Her eyes glistened with the raw, unpolished terror of a mother who had spent the last hour bargaining with every god she had ever claimed not to believe in. My daughter, she whispered. Is that for her? The coordinator answered for him. Mr. Webb is the only match we've found. His donation may be the difference between life and death. Victoria's knees nearly buckled. She caught herself on the edge of a counter. Marcus turned his head slightly toward her, not fully, just enough so she would know he heard. Without anger. Without venom. Without triumph. Just simple truth. I hope she makes it, he said quietly. Victoria covered her mouth with a trembling hand. This was not the janitor she had reduced to nothing in front of her staff. This was a father giving pieces of himself away to save a stranger child. A stranger child who happened to be hers. Her voice broke completely. Why, she whispered. After what I said to you, why would you help my daughter? Marcus didn't answer immediately. The donation was halfway done now, draining warmth from his body, his face pale but resolute. Lily clung to his arm like a lifeline, watching him with wide, frightened eyes. Finally, Marcus spoke. Because she's a child, he said softly. And she was afraid. And someone needed to help. His voice wavered. And, because once, someone couldn't help the person I loved. I know what that feels like. Victoria's breath hitched. She didn't understand everything, but she felt the weight behind his words. The nurse signaled the coordinator. The first unit was filled. They replaced the bag quickly and began drawing the second. Victoria stood motionless, watching the blood, his blood, drain into the bag that would soon flow into her daughter's veins. It was too much for her to bear. Her perfect mask shattered. Mr. Webb, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. I was wrong about you. Marcus closed his eyes. Whether he heard her or not, she couldn't tell. Lily leaned over him, whispering, Daddy. You okay? Yeah, he murmured. Just tired. Victoria's breath caught. She looked at Lily, the little girl clutching her father's hand, unaware that the woman standing before her had crushed his dignity earlier that morning. The realization sliced through Victoria like a blade. This man. This father. This stranger. He had every reason to turn away. But he didn't. And now he was saving her daughter's life with nothing but the strength of his heart and the purity of his blood. Victoria Ashford, CEO, powerhouse, master strategist, had absolutely nothing to offer in return. For the first time in her life, she felt small. Very, very small. And Marcus Webb, quiet, humble, unassuming, had never seemed larger. The aftermath, a daughter saved, a CEO shattered. The hospital felt different after the transfusion, not quieter, but suspended. As if every hallway, every light, every breath inside those walls was holding still, waiting for the verdict on a single fragile life. Marcus was moved to a recovery room, though recovery was generous. After giving 2 units of blood, his vision was a swirling haze and his limbs felt like sandbags. But he waved off the wheelchair they offered. Lily was perched nervously beside him, her legs swinging restlessly, her small hand gripping his sleeve. The nurse checked his vitals again. You need rest, Mr. Webb. Real rest. Someone should drive you home. Marcus nodded, but the words drifted around him like distant radio static. He wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not until he knew. Downstairs, the transfusion was underway. And with each passing second, his blood was flowing deeper into the veins of a child he had never met until today, but whose life now felt inexplicably tied to his own. Across the hospital, Victoria Ashford pressed her forehead to a small square window of glass overlooking the trauma suite where Emma lay surrounded by machines. Wires crossing her chest. A ventilator mask. Monitors glowing with numbers that were either salvation or warning. She'd never been afraid of numbers before. Now they made her dizzy. Emma's tiny arm was taped carefully around the 4 that delivered Marcus's blood into her fragile veins. Victoria watched the slow drip 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 of crimson fluid, hers not by biology, but by miracle. Her daughter's eyelids fluttered. Her breathing evened. A weak flush of color returned to her cheeks. And in that moment, something inside Victoria cracked open so violently she had to grip the edge of the sink to stay upright. She lowered her head and exhaled a shuddering sob. This wasn't the poised, diamond-hard CEO who commanded boardrooms and dominated headlines. This was a mother, raw and unmasked, watching her child teeter at the edge of the abyss. A nurse stepped in quietly. She's stabilizing, Mrs. Ashford. Her numbers look, honestly, better than we hoped. Victoria covered her trembling mouth. So she's okay. We're not out of the woods yet, the nurse said gently. But the blood, she paused, lowering her voice. That man saved her life. Victoria shut her eyes, shame searing through her like acid. That man. The janitor. The man she belittled, dismissed, sliced apart with careless cruelty. Marcus Webb. His name echoed through her mind like a verdict. The nurse hesitated, then added softly, he's resting upstairs. After giving that much, he's going to need time. Victoria looked at her daughter again, her voice a rasp. I need to thank him. I need to. She couldn't finish the sentence. She wasn't sure what she needed. Forgiveness? Redemption? Or courage enough to face the man she had cut down hours before he saved her only child? Dr. Chen appeared at the doorway, still in scrub streaked faintly with dried blood. She's stabilizing, he said. We almost lost her twice during the hemorrhage. But the transfusion, it worked faster than I expected. She's strong. She's fighting. Victoria sagged against the wall. I want to sit with her. Of course, he said with a soft nod. But before that, there's something you should know. Victoria stiffened. The tone in his voice wasn't medical. It was hesitant. Compassionate. Almost apologetic. "Your donor," Dr. Chen said, "Mr. Webb. I know him. From years ago." Victoria blinked. "What?" "He's not just some employee in your cleaning division," Dr. Chen continued. "Marcus used to be an engineer. A damn good one. I treated his wife during her illness. He gave up everything, career, savings, home, just to keep her alive as long as possible." Dr. Chen's gaze sharpened with quiet judgment. "He works 2 jobs now. Not because he's unskilled. Not because he's lazy. But because the world doesn't give men like him second chances." A cold wave washed over Victoria. "What do you mean, men like him?" "Men who fall," the doctor said simply. "Men who life crushes under circumstances they didn't ask for. Men who carry their grief quietly, without blaming anyone." Victoria's heartbeat thudded unevenly. She had yelled at Marcus. Because she was stressed. Because a cart blocked her path. Because he was invisible. And now, the man she diminished was the reason Emma's heart beat steadily on the monitor. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know." "Power rarely bothers to know the people it stands on," Dr. Chen said, not cruel, but honest. "You're not the first. But you might be the first who wants to make it right." He left her standing alone. The truth settled on her like a lead blanket. Marcus Webb wasn't a nameless janitor. He was a widower. A father. A brilliant mind forced into the shadows. And a man whose quiet dignity had shamed her more deeply than anyone ever had. Upstairs, Marcus sat upright even though every muscle in his body wanted to collapse. Lily's head rested on his shoulder, her soft breath steady and warm. Outside, the hospital lobby lights flickered as night began to settle over the building. He told himself he'd leave soon. He told himself he'd rest when he got home. But his body wasn't listening. And neither was fate. Footsteps approached, light, hesitant, nothing like the sharp, confident rhythm of earlier that morning. Marcus didn't look up. He didn't have the strength. But he felt the presence before she spoke, a shifting in the air, a tension, a remorse so palpable it vibrated between them. "Mr. Webb," Victoria said softly. Marcus lifted his gaze. Victoria Ashford stood before him, eyes red, makeup smudged, shoulders trembling under the weight of a grief he recognized all too well. She looked nothing like the woman who had sliced him apart in the lobby. This version of her. He wasn't sure she had ever existed before. "I came to tell you," her voice faltered, something it had never dared to do in public. "My daughter is alive because of you." Marcus nodded, no pride, no anger, just quiet exhaustion. "You don't owe me anything," he murmured. "No," she said, shaking her head, tears spilling. "But I owe you everything." Marcus shifted Lily gently, preparing to stand. "I should get her home." "Please," Victoria breathed, reaching out before stopping herself. "Please don't leave yet. There's something I need you to hear." Marcus waited, weary but patient. Victoria swallowed hard, words trembling on her tongue. "Your daughter may have survived today," she whispered, "but mine, she wouldn't have. Not without you." She stepped closer. "And I don't deserve the chance to say this, but I need to." Her voice broke completely. "I am so sorry." Silence stretched, heavy and fragile. But deep beneath it, something else stirred. The first quiet shift of a world being rewritten. The boardroom reckoning. The night felt unnaturally still when Victoria finally left the hospital. Asphalt glistened under the streetlights as though the city itself had been crying. She couldn't remember the last time she'd stepped into the world feeling small, fragile, and uncertain. It was a sensation so unfamiliar she almost startled at the vulnerability of it. Hours earlier, her daughter had been dying. Hours earlier, a stranger, no, not a stranger, a man she knew but never saw, had saved Emma's life with his own blood. And hours earlier, she had looked that man in the eyes and realized he was everything she wasn't. Kind. Selfless. Steady. Human. By the time she arrived home, dawn was creeping across the horizon like a warning. Her assistant had left 12 missed calls. Her CFO had sent 9 messages. The board requested an emergency meeting at 9 a.m. Victoria stared at the email. There was no request about it. It was summons. Ashford Industries expected explanations, apologies, and strategic sacrifices. But something in her had snapped loose at the hospital, as if Marcus Webb had shaken the foundations she'd spent her life building. She wasn't the same woman they'd dragged into this meeting. And she knew they wouldn't like who walked out. At 8:57, the elevator doors slid open to the top floor of Ashford headquarters. The scent of polished wood and expensive cologne hit her like a familiar punch. The walls were decorated with awards, magazine covers featuring her triumphant smile, photographs of technological achievements and corporate milestones. Her successes. Her legacy. And suddenly, all she could see were the faces she had stepped over to climb this far. The boardroom doors loomed ahead, mahogany, heavy, intimidating to most. To Victoria, they had always been a gateway. A throne room. Her battlefield. But today, they felt like the entrance to a trial where she stood accused. Inside, 8 board members sat around the massive table, steely eyes, folded hands, shallow patience. Harold Weston, the chairman, sat in the center like a judge ready to hammer the gavel. Victoria, he said without warmth, please sit. She didn't. Not yet. Her palms were cold. Her heartbeat was too fast. But beneath the panic, something steady hummed. Something she hadn't felt in years. Conviction. Harold cleared his throat. Your absence yesterday. My daughter almost died, Victoria said, calm but razor sharp. I left because the hospital told me she might not survive the night. There was a ripple of discomfort at the table. Sympathy wasn't something corporate leaders permitted themselves, but fear for a child they understood. Even so, Harold pressed on. We're relieved to hear she's stabilizing, he said. But your abrupt departure saved nothing, she finished. But a man in our building did. A murmur. Several confused looks. Harold frowned. A man. An employee, Victoria said. A janitor. One I publicly humiliated in the lobby. One I dismissed because I couldn't see past my own impatience. The room froze. Marcus Webb, she continued. A man who used to be an aerospace engineer. Who lost his wife. Who supports a daughter with a medical condition. Who works 2 jobs. Who gave 2 units of blood to save my child. Gasps. Raised eyebrows. Disbelief tightening jaws. And you expect us to believe this is relevant to our meeting? Harold asked stiffly. It's entirely relevant, Victoria replied. Because leadership isn't just about quarterly earnings. It's about what kind of company we are. What kind of people we allow ourselves to become. A thick silence blanketed the room. Victoria took a breath. This company prides itself on innovation. On progress. On being the best. But somewhere along the line, we decided profit mattered more than people. We let efficiency replace empathy. We let status replace humanity. She lifted her chin, eyes blazing. And I let myself become the worst of it. The board exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the Victoria they knew. The Victoria they built. The Victoria they controlled. Harold leaned forward, voice low. This sounds suspiciously like you're apologizing, Victoria. And apologies, however touching, don't fix investor fallout. No, she said firmly. But change does. Change, he repeated. What change? I'm implementing a program, she said. A support initiative for single parents and low-income employees. Real health coverage. Emergency child care. Flexible hours. Paid family leave. Harold's expression hardened. That is not financially feasible. It's morally necessary. It is not in our budget. Then we'll change the budget. You do not have unilateral authority. Then remove me. The room erupted in whispers like brushfire. Harold blinked. What did you say? Victoria finally took her seat, folding her hands with a stillness that radiated absolute clarity. I said, she repeated calmly, you can support me, or you can replace me. But if keeping this job requires me to continue being the kind of leader I was yesterday, then I don't want it. The board members looked stunned. Harold opened his mouth, but another director, Evelyn Shaw, the longest tenured and most respected among them, raised a hand. Harold, she said quietly, enough. All eyes turned to her. I've watched this company grow cold, Evelyn continued. And I've watched Victoria carry it alone. If she's finally found a reason to remember who she is, I suggest we listen. Victoria's breath hitched. Evelyn turned to her with a soft, knowing smile. Your daughter is alive because of a man this company overlooked. I will not overlook that lesson. One by one, directors murmured tentative agreement, even those who were usually hostile. Harold's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake, he warned. No, Victoria said, standing. I'm correcting one. She gathered her papers and walked out, no fear, no hesitation, no armor. Only purpose. Back at the hospital, the snow outside had begun to fall. Marcus sat in the lobby, Lily asleep on his lap, unaware that somewhere across the city, an empire had just shifted, because of him. Unaware that the woman striding back toward the hospital with new fire in her veins was no longer coming as a CEO. She was coming as a mother. As someone changed. As someone who now saw him. And fate, watching quietly from the shadows, smiled. This was only the beginning. When two worlds finally touch. Snow fell in slow, drifting spirals outside St. Vincent's Hospital, softening the hard edges of the world. It coated the pavement, clung to window ledges, and muted the sounds of the usually bustling street. Inside the lobby, time felt suspended. Marcus sat on a bench with Lily curled against his side, asleep again, her small head pressed over his heartbeat as though she could keep him grounded by staying close. He felt hollowed out, drained physically, but emotionally, he was something else entirely. He was unsettled. Not by the blood he donated. Not by the dizziness still clouding the corners of his vision. But by the woman who had come to apologize. Victoria Ashford. He had expected arrogance, deflection, the careful shell of a CEO trying to preserve her image. Instead, he had seen something raw. Something cracked. Something that looked far too much like grief. The kind Marcus understood intimately. But grief could be manipulative. Grief could soften even the hardest heart. Grief could make a person vulnerable to the wrong things. So Marcus forced himself to breathe slowly, deeply, keeping his thoughts steady. He didn't know what Victoria wanted from him next, but he suspected fate wasn't finished twisting their lives together. Footsteps approached. Not hurried. Not commanding. But soft. Careful. Deliberate. He looked up. Victoria stood 10 feet away, dressed in yesterday's wrinkled suit, her hair falling from its once perfect style, mascara faintly smudged beneath tired eyes that carried the weight of a parent who had spent the night bargaining with the universe. She looked nothing like a CEO. She looked like a mother. Mr. Webb, she said quietly, stopping just short of him. May I sit? Marcus nodded. Victoria eased down onto the bench as though the world had become heavier overnight. She didn't speak at first. She just watched Lily's sleeping form, her expression softening further. "She's beautiful," she whispered. Marcus's voice was gentle, but firm. "My daughter isn't part of this. Whatever you came to say it to me." Victoria swallowed, hard. "That's fair." A beat of silence passed. Then she exhaled shakily. "Emma is awake." Marcus straightened. "Awake?" Victoria nodded, tears filling but not falling. "Still weak. Still connected to machines." But she opened her eyes. "She asked for me." Relief washed over Marcus like warm water. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that. Not for Victoria's sake, but for the little girl who had clung to his wrist while her life slipped away. "I'm glad," he murmured. "No," Victoria said, shaking her head. "Gladness is what we say to colleagues after a successful quarter. What I feel is something else entirely." Her voice broke. "She's alive because of you." Marcus looked away. He couldn't bear the gratitude in her tone, not when she had humiliated him hours earlier, not when he still felt the sting of her words scraping against memories of all the people who had once treated him like he didn't belong anywhere. "Mrs. Ashford," Marcus began, "I didn't do it for you." "I know," she said. "That makes it worse." He frowned. "Worse?" Victoria let out a shaky breath. "Because I don't know how to repay someone who gave their blood for my child. And I don't know how to undo the way I treated you." "You can't," Marcus said simply. The words hit her like a blow. She looked away, blinking fast. "Then let me try to do something else," she whispered. "Something that matters." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, a nurse poked her head out of a nearby hallway. "Mrs. Ashford. Your daughter is asking for you." Victoria stood, but she didn't leave. Something held her in place. "Mr. Webb," she said softly, "Emma asked if the man who helped her was still here." Marcus froze. "She remembers me." "She remembers your voice," Victoria whispered. "She said you made her feel safe." For a moment Marcus couldn't speak. He had been there for 43 seconds of a child's life, but sometimes seconds were enough. "Would you?" Victoria hesitated, uncertainty making her voice fragile. "Would you like to say hello?" "Only if you want to." Marcus looked at Lily, sleeping soundly against him. "Only if I can bring my daughter," he said. Victoria nodded immediately. "Of course. Emma would like that." The walk down the hallway was slow. Marcus carried Lily in his arms, her cheek resting on his shoulder. Victoria walked beside him, not leading, not guiding, just walking. As equals. As something neither of them had language for yet. When they reached Emma's room, the lights were dimmed. Machines hummed softly. A small figure lay propped against pillows, her cheeks still pale but her eyes open, very open. Blue, bright, and alive. When she saw Marcus, her lips parted in a smile so fragile it nearly broke him. "Hi," she whispered. Marcus stepped closer. Lily stirred and blinked awake, rubbing her eyes. "You're the man who helped me," Emma said, voice raspy. Marcus knelt beside the bed. "I just stayed with you until the doctors could." Emma shook her head weakly. "You held me. You talked to me. You didn't leave." Her eyes glistened. "I wasn't alone." Marcus swallowed the knot in his throat. "No. You weren't." Lily climbed onto the chair beside the bed and held up a folded sheet of construction paper. "This is for you," she said shyly. "I made it so you won't be scared anymore." Emma took the card with trembling fingers. The smile she managed was small, but real. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do you want to be my friend?" Lily nodded instantly. "We already are." Something in Victoria's chest cracked again, not painfully this time, but the kind of break that makes room for something new. She watched Marcus watching the girls. She watched Lily gently adjust Emma's blanket. She watched Emma relax for the first time in hours. She saw a man whose quiet strength had reshaped her entire world in a single day. And she knew, instinctively, irrevocably, that her life was no longer on the trajectory she had built. She turned to him. "Mr. Webb," she said softly. Marcus looked up. "I don't want this to be the end of our conversation," she said. "In fact, I think this is only the beginning." Marcus felt it then, the shift. The weight of something coming. Something big. Something complicated. Something dangerous. "Victoria," he said carefully, dropping the formal title for the first time, "what are you trying to say?" She took a slow breath. "I want to ask you something," she said. "Not as a CEO. As a mother. As a woman who has made mistakes." She met his gaze head-on. "I want your help changing the world that almost destroyed you." The room fell silent. Marcus stared at her. And for the first time since Sarah died, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Possibility. The shocking reveal. Snow still clung to the hospital windows the next morning when Marcus arrived for Lily's follow-up appointment. He held her mittened hand as they walked through the entrance, her boots crunching on salt crystals the janitorial team had scattered across the floor. Marcus felt different today. Lighter, somehow. More seen. More dangerous. Because now he wasn't hiding anymore. And Victoria Ashford, CEO, Titan, mother, was waiting for him. She stood near the pediatric wing entrance, her posture straight but not rigid, her clothes elegant but not imposing. The hard shine she carried into every boardroom had dimmed. In its place was something warmer, more human. "Marcus," she said softly. He nodded. "Victoria." Their greeting was simple. But charged. Heavy with unspoken truths. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can I go see if Emma's awake?" Victoria smiled. "She's been asking for you." Lily darted off, the nurse waving her through. When they were alone, Victoria exhaled shakily. "I talked to my board," she said. "I told them who saved Emma. What you did. What you've survived." Victoria. "No," she said, lifting a hand. "Let me finish." She stepped closer, not as a superior, not as an employer, but as someone standing at the edge of something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "I want to build something with you, Marcus. A program that changes this company. That changes lives. A program with your name on it. With your voice guiding it." Marcus swallowed. Hard. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "There are a dozen consultants who do it for prestige or a paycheck." "I don't trust people who only serve themselves," Victoria said. "I trust people who bleed for others." Marcus looked away. "I'm not a hero." "No," she said. "You're something better. You're real." He didn't know how to respond. So he didn't. Not yet. Before either could speak again, a hospital administrator hurried down the hallway toward Victoria. "Ms. Ashford? I have the files you requested." Marcus frowned. "Files?" Victoria hesitated. The administrator handed her a sealed folder. "We pulled everything from our employment records archive. Just like you asked." Marcus stiffened. "Victoria," he said slowly, "what files are those?" Her eyes flickered. "I asked HR to pull your employee history," she admitted carefully. "Not for your cleaning position. Before. Marcus went very still. Something cold, old, and razor-sharp slid under his skin. "What are you talking about?" he asked. Victoria swallowed hard, gripping the folder. "Marcus, this isn't the first time you applied to Ashford Industries." The hallway hummed faintly with the buzz of fluorescent lights, too bright, too loud, too revealing. Marcus barely breathed. Yes, Victoria whispered. You applied 3 years ago. For an engineering position. His heart slammed against his ribs. 3 years ago. The same year Sarah died. The same year he lost everything. He remembered sending out resumes to every engineering firm within 100 miles. He remembered applying to Ashford, desperate and hopeful, believing he could climb back if someone just gave him a chance. He remembered checking his email until his eyes burned. He remembered silence. HR rejected your application, Victoria said, voice trembling but firm. Not because you weren't qualified. Your resume was extraordinary. Your references were glowing. You were overqualified, if anything. Marcus blinked. Then why? Victoria opened the folder. Her hands shook. Because they Googled you, she whispered. They saw the medical bankruptcy. They saw the gap in your employment. They saw the foreclosure. They saw that you were a widower with a 3-year-old child and they flagged your application as high risk. Marcus's throat closed. High risk, he repeated, voice cracking with disbelief. Victoria nodded slowly, painfully. Yes. They assumed you'd be unreliable. Emotionally compromised. Too burdened to perform. Too distracted to commit. A liability. Marcus staggered back a step, gripping the wall. That application, he said hoarsely, was my last chance before I took the janitor job. I know, Victoria whispered. Marcus. I didn't know. I swear to you. I didn't know. Until last night. She flipped to the next page. And it gets worse. Marcus froze. What, worse? Victoria looked up, and for the first time since he met her, she looked afraid of him, not because of who he was, but because of what she was about to say. When the engineering position opened again 2 months later, she said quietly, you applied a second time. Marcus's breath caught. He had. He remembered. He had gathered every ounce of hope left in him. He had prayed someone would see him, not his debt, not his grief, but him. Victoria took a shaking breath. HR forwarded your resume to my office for final approval. Marcus stared. And, he whispered. Victoria's voice broke. The rejection email came from my account. Silence collapsed between them. Not soft. Not gentle. A shattering. Marcus felt the ground tilt beneath him, memories crashing into one another, Sarah's hospital bills, Lily's toddler cries, the foreclosure letter, the night he stood in their empty house holding a box of his wife's belongings. All while Ashford Industries, while Victoria Ashford, had unknowingly closed a door that might have saved him. Saved Lily. Saved everything. I didn't read it, Victoria whispered. I didn't even see it. My assistant handled all routine approvals. I never even knew your name crossed my desk. Marcus swallowed hard, jaw tight, eyes burning. And now? Victoria stepped closer, desperation trembling through her posture. And now, she whispered, I know that my company helped break you. Her voice cracked like ice splitting on a frozen lake. And I know that you still saved my daughter anyway. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time saw not a CEO, not an enemy, not a symbol of everything he lost. But a woman realizing the weight of the empire she had built on other people's backs. A woman who had unknowingly destroyed a man who now held the power to destroy her in return. Marcus, she whispered, tears gathering. Say something. Please. But Marcus couldn't speak. Because there are moments when language is too small. Moments when truth is a weapon. Moments when forgiveness feels impossible. Moments when fate reveals its cruel, perfect symmetry. And leaves two people standing in the wreckage of everything they thought they knew. Finally, after what felt like years, Marcus found his voice. It was quiet. It was steady. It was devastating. "Victoria," he said softly. "What happens next depends on what kind of person you choose to be now." She inhaled sharply. "Then let me prove it," she whispered. "To you. To my daughter. To myself." Marcus didn't answer. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a reckoning neither of them were prepared for. A reckoning that would decide not just the future of Ashford Industries, but the future of the two families fate had violently woven together.